Hello, and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one person or one starfish at a time. I'm really excited to be spending some time with a good friend of mine, Angie Manson. She's an amazing lady. She's been in the recovery space for the last 27 years down in California. We'll get into her story here as we go. Remember to rate, review, follow her, tag us on Instagram, all of that stuff. Anyway, thanks for listening in, and thank you so much, Angie, for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, thank you. What a great intro. I love that. I need to take some notes on that.
Angie has her own podcast too. Make sure to follow that. I know there's some amazing people on it. So make sure to check that out. So Angie, tell me a little bit about like way back, we'll go back to whenever you started into the recovery space. I know personally you've had an incredible story. I know a little bit about it, but not like all of it in depth, I think. So, what got you into that space and why?
Well, I got into the space because I grew up in a generation of the latchkey kids, which meant basically my mom worked two jobs. I didn't have a dad. And so we were sort of responsible for getting ourselves to school, getting ourselves home, making ourselves dinner sometimes as needed, sort of being very independent at a very young age. And for me, that independence and that freedom, I started going down a pretty bad path because I was also with a lot of other kids who were in the similar situation. And we weren't putting together study groups. We were like sneaking up on the hill and smoking cigarettes and drinking and weed. And so at a very young age, I started using drugs and alcohol, like at 11 years old. So by the time I was 16, my mom had moved us in different places around town, hoping that I would get away from these bad types of people that I was getting myself in trouble with. But the funny thing about that is you can keep running, but you're still you. And I still attracted the same kind of people who were just like me, who were not on a path to do well. And so I went to my first rehab at 16. I was in and out of juvenile hall probably 7 times by the time I was 18. Barely graduated high school. And when I was 18, my mom kicked me out. She's like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to deal with you. I don't have to deal with you. You're an adult now. You can leave. And so went and lived with my boyfriend and continued my little journey of getting in trouble and drinking and using. And unfortunately, as an adult, the penance or the what how you're going to get out of trouble is much harder, and it does your record isn't sealed anymore. This is going to follow you for the rest of your life. So by the time I was about 20 years old, I had gotten myself a job at a rental car place, and they let me rent a car. I had moved back to Reno, which was my hometown, but I really wanted to go see my friends that I was being bad with back in Santa Cruz. So I took the car and went back to Santa Cruz and ended up getting myself in some trouble in this car and a few tickets, also crashing it. And finally, they took the car away from me. And because I had done all that, I did not go back to work. And I said, okay, well, I guess that's a sign. I'm back in Santa Cruz now. I'm not going to go back to Reno. I don't have that job anymore. And what I didn't realize is that car rental place had actually filed charges on me for quote unquote stealing their car. And because I worked there, it wasn't larceny, it was embezzlement. And because it was more than $10,000, it was a higher level of charge than had I just stolen cigarettes from a store or something like that.
Right. Wow.
So at 20, I was facing about 10 years in prison
Oh,
as my future. And for me, even though those were the kind of people I was hanging around, which were people that were in and out of prison, was not like the best crowds for me to be around. I knew that's not something that I needed or wanted to do. I had a public defender who said, look, we're going to try to get you drug diversion instead. And I still in denial at that time, like, oh, okay, I get it. We're going to say I have a drug problem. That way I can get out of going to prison. Okay, I can get on board with this. We're just saying that. I still was
right.
not on board. And fortunately for me, the judge that was over my case, and I think I was one of the very few, I've done some research since then because I wanted to track this guy down, but he did give me the drug diversion. And that was something new back then that they were trying as opposed to criminalizing people with addiction. And so he sentenced me to the rehab for a year, and the one I chose was one that my best friend had gone through prior. And I knew that it had worked for her, and it was just like this little rinky dink. It was in the executive director's house. And I knew I could stay there for a year. Like typically, you're never going to find a program, or very rarely you'll find a program where you can stay that amount of time. And so about a month or two in, I started working because I couldn't afford it. He let me sort of work off my program and stay there. And that's when I found my true passion and purpose. I always knew I'd like to help people. I was always sort of that one that was like lifting up your hair when you were throwing up, making sure you got your purse when you were too out of it. Like I was always like that helpful person. I loved helping. That was sort of,
Right.
I knew that was my purpose, but I was finally in a position and a job and a passion for helping people that were like me. And so, fast forward a couple years of me staying there because I had this restitution I had to pay, and I had these, this thing hanging over my head, this 10 years, and not at all feeling like comfortable that I could make it on my own. So I stayed there, working my way up the corporate ladder, right hand man to the executive director. And at the end of the 3 years, the judge looked at everything that I had achieved and accomplished and strung together, and he basically pardoned me at that point and relieved me of um, the restitution, which was still $13,000 I had to pay, the felonies, like he wiped my whole record clean. And so I had a fresh start from there, which wasn't a start because I'd already been doing it for 3 years. And so I've just, now I was there because I wanted to be there, and I've been there ever since. So, fast forward 27 years, here I am. I am the CEO of the place. We've gone through many ups and downs and changes, but the consistent has been me staying here and doing what I do, and feeling very fortunate to be able to do what I love, and that's this.
Wow, that's crazy. I didn't know all that. That's really awesome. Um, I'm glad that you found your way out at such a young age too. Like, I mean, 20 is super young.
Yeah.
And so kind of went through the dark and got out. What is something that you see, I guess, as you're in this industry for so long and helping people, that, if someone's listening to this, because I know we just chat on your podcast a bit, but so I know that people, listen into this stuff and they're like, you know what? I don't know that I have a problem, but maybe I do. Maybe I do drugs, or maybe I drink a little bit more than I should. I mean, I do hear a lot of people say that. They're like, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a drunk, whatever, however they want to word it. But I just like my couple glasses every night. And I feel that if someone's, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel if someone's trying to, um, say that they're not an alcoholic, maybe there is some addiction. I don't know if there's any ramifications to that. That just crossed my mind.
Yeah, well, I think at the point where you're either drinking every day or to excess, there might be a problem there. And to be honest, that's our toughest demographic, are the ones that are quote unquote functioning,
Mm-hmm.
because they pay their bills, they go to work every day, they
Yep.
keep their family together. So there's not that like bottom like I had, where I was literally
Yeah.
facing 10 years in prison, that catalysted me to get well. But it's the ones that are sort of just doing it every day, but it's not ruining their life. But I would definitely say, hey, if you can't go a week without drinking, there might be a problem there. Or if you just like only party on the weekends, but maybe you don't really remember what happened, there might be a problem there. Or, the only time you do hard drugs is when you drink. There might be a problem there as well. So again, it's a very personal thing, but definitely the people who are high functioning and doing that, it's much harder for them to realize there's a problem and actually want to change.
Well, I was kind of curious, like if people say that they don't have a problem, I know when I say I don't have a problem, normally it's because I think there might be a problem.
Yeah,
And when you start to
definitely. I
think there
mean, that's
might
what
be a
I
problem,
was saying. I was like, oh, I'm just saying I have a problem. I get it. I could get on board with that. But I am facing 10 years of prison at 20 years old, and I still didn't think I had a problem. So
right.
definitely there's levels of denial there for sure. But the one thing you can't do is tell somebody you have a problem. Like any addict or alcoholic does not want to be evaluated or told, it's got to be something. And certainly you could, as a loved one, lay out evidence to show why you think there's a problem. But
I think it was it
it's
Friends with inventions. Where they had inventions, was it Friends? It was one of those sitcoms. And then they always like brought in the friends, and then there's like this big wallpaper. It's like intervention.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's sometimes what it takes, because there's such a level of denial. Like people associate getting sober with, a loss of identity, a loss of coping skills. Like there's just so much that goes with addiction where sometimes it takes extreme measures like that to get them to realize that there actually is a problem if they're not being impinged on by life with the obvious signs that there's a problem.
That makes sense. Now, if you're someone listening in and you like you kind of mentioned kind of helping people, if you're someone listening in and you feel like someone in your life is going through some of that, or maybe they're even trying to get out of it and they're already going through counseling or 12-step programs, whatever awesome means are out there that people use to help them through that. How is something you can do to support someone as they're going through that?
I think the big thing is just understanding where they're at and understanding where they're at on the journey. You and I had talked about earlier, like providing a supportive environment. Like, they might say, yeah, it's fine, go ahead and have a drink in front of me. But if they're very new in recovery and alcohol is their problem, that is a consistent trigger. And it's not a testimony of their strength if they could be around drinking and go to a bar the first week of sobriety. It's just not setting them up for success. So I would say, whatever means you could do to help someone out, whether it's, let me take you, I can see you're struggling today, can I take you to a meeting, or let's have you talked to your counselor recently, or have you looked at your outpatient tools, and are you applying those? Because continuing care, even after you do a long-term program with us, we still recommend and always push towards long-term continuum of care, because it's not like I did that, I got better, and now I'm fixed. It's a lifelong journey, and you got to keep getting better. And there's circumstances that come up that you couldn't possibly plan for, and they're not always easy to navigate, nor are they like a no-brainer. And so you've got to constantly be moving forward with a supportive group or environment in order to be successful.
What do you, that's good. What do you feel is one of the biggest reasons, maybe like you did mention associations a little bit. I'm wondering if that, you think that that's one of the bigger reasons that people go down some of those trails? And or do you think some of it, because you've seen a lot in 27 years, do you think some of it or a lot of it is genetic? Like I've heard all of those kind of things being tossed out there. What are your
I do not agree with genetics whatsoever. I think it's self-created. I would say more nurture, or more nature, like whatever they're exposed to. So like if they were raised by alcoholics and that's what they saw every single day, then I do believe
circumstance,
it's a much
environment?
easier, yeah, it's a much easier leap into addiction. I don't believe, there's very few people that are born addicted. I think of, some moms who are on opiates or that sort of thing, but that's a very small demographic. I think we create our own future. So physically. So I don't believe, and I don't think it's been proven that there's a gene that's associated with it, but I do believe the environment you've been raised in. But at the same time, sometimes it has nothing to do with that. Like my best friend and I were on the exact same path, but she came from a middle class, supportive family that was there for her, and she still went down the same path that I did, even though I was raised in a very low income, aunts and uncles that I saw all the time. Like we were raised totally differently, but we both ended up on the same path. So it's not always one for one that you're going to end up like that.
Hmm.
In fact, I do see a lot of kids of addicts and alcoholics that go the exact opposite because that's what they saw growing up. They're like, I will never have that in my life going forward.
But then they can have, we talked about this too, they can have addiction to something else that's more socially acceptable.
Sure,
Um,
like
so
working ourselves to
like
death.
working. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Because that's what I did. So I get that. What's something that you've, in all the time that you kind of spent in this, what is it that drives you every day? What is it that motivates you to get out of bed in the morning? I mean, you said you found your purpose and this is it. But what on a day to day, there's some days you don't feel like getting up. There, we were talking about 75 hard. There's days you don't feel like doing some of that stuff. What motivates you? What kind of habits or rituals have you installed to create a winning life?
Well, it's definitely changed a lot. Every year it's something different. For me, obviously in the beginning it was to help other people who were just like me. And then as I, took a less working hands-on with people and more just like providing an environment for people who were like me to help people like me, and be like the boss and support people in sobriety. That's happened. In recent years, what's really been driving me, yeah, like especially the last two, is my overall health and well-being. because I've realized as I'm quote unquote getting older that, I could be around another 50 years, and what do I want that 50 years to look like physically and mentally? And so I push hard every day to be my absolute best so that I can be here for all those people. I can be here for my kids. I can keep creating this purpose and expand and help more people. So the focus has shifted to me, which is the first time it's ever been in my life, so I can be a better person for all of them. So, again, it just depends where you're at on the journey. It's always been about helping others, but now I'm realizing the best thing to help others is to help myself.
Well, and you said this has kind of been recent for you that you've been on this kind of journey. What are some things that have helped you get on that journey? I guess maybe a book you've read or someone you've been around or whatever. And then what are some action steps that you're doing that you do find built yourself up and built your self-love, fill your cup, all that stuff?
Yeah, so definitely, when the pandemic hit and being a healthcare organization in the state of California, we were hit with so much as far as deciding what's the greatest good to do. Do we put people in quarantine? Do we quit bringing people in? Do we have our people come to work? Like every day was unprecedented as far as like how do we keep helping people in the safest way possible? And with that was so much like mental duress and stress, and I'm not going into my work, which I love seeing all my people, because we're trying to limit the amount of people and we only want the people coming up that are working directly with the clients. And so I don't have like my stable routine and being with my people. Now we're pivoting to Zoom, and my son was in his senior year. He's losing his whole senior year, his prom, his volleyball, all the things that he was looking so forward to and I was looking forward to. And so there was a lot of loss, and unhealthiness that went with that due to, I mean, everybody went through it. I was not different. And so I kind of made the decision that once he went off to college that I was going to do 75 hard, because I knew that was a very strict discipline. It would fill the void of him being there. My daughter left at the exact same time, so I lost quote unquote both my kids at the same time. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go all in on myself so that I'm distracted and I don't think about what's not here. And that's what I did. And with that was so many healthy habits of drinking a gallon of water, reading 10 pages, working out twice a day, being outside every day, which a lot of people weren't. They stayed in isolation, and I had to go outside. And I say had to, but because it
Yeah, because you
really
chose.
wasn't had to, but it was a
Yeah,
blessing. And
you
thank
got to.
gosh. And so getting all those healthy habits in over and over and over and pushing myself and holding myself to this standard was exactly what I needed. And we talked about, I failed twice, like 45 days in, 60 days in. And so I was actually on the program for the majority of almost a year, and having that much time under your belt of consistency really changed things for me. And then I decided to do it again, in February. And so here I am at like day 70, but I was able to level up even further. So at this point in my life, I am at the healthiest, fittest body, mind, and soul than I've ever been in my entire life. And it's just keeping with all those habits and routines.
That's so cool. And if you guys haven't checked out 75 Hard, just Google 75 Hard, Andy Frisella. And it's a great program. Very much of a mental toughness program. It's not meant to be a workout program, though there's that aspect. It's very much of a mental toughness
Yeah.
challenge, which it's pretty incredible. So what's something that you would say to someone that's like, um, I want to get a new life, but like I'm sure when you went through that, if you think back, you were scared to leave your friends. Like you said, you were in Reno, you left the circumstances and then you kept going back.
Yep.
What's something maybe someone can be listening to and they're doing the same thing and they want to go back and they're fighting that. And I believe that's be a killer inner battle that would help them maybe, I don't know, be able to stay out of those, back into those situations.
I struggled with this very early on, because when I did my program, I did it in the town that I had been really bad in. I did it here in Santa Cruz, and I wanted to immerse myself around those people that weren't doing good so I could feel better about what I was doing. But the reality is it would just, I would instantly get like FOMO. Like I was like, I want to be doing what they're doing. Like they're having fun and I'm miserable. So it would work against me over and over. And so I really struggled my first couple of years of sobriety because I was putting myself in those environments and thinking seeing people do bad would make me feel better, but that wasn't the case. And so I would
Mhm.
just say, you've got to completely, kind of like when I quit smoking, you've got to totally change what you're doing in order to give yourself a long runway in order to do it. So like when I quit smoking, we always had our social circle. Like let's all meet at 3 o'clock. We're all going to smoke our cigarettes and hang out, and it was more of a social thing that was perpetuating a bad habit. And so I had to avoid those social situations in order to give myself a healthy habit, so that I could at one point go out and hang out with everybody, but not feel like I needed to smoke to be there or when I was around it.
That's really good. Did you find whenever you cut these habits out, I've heard when you cut out a habit, so like 3 o'clock, did you put something in its place that was good? Or did you just be like, okay, I'm just going to work through 3 o'clock? Or you're
Nope,
like, at 3 o'clock
100%. So
instead, I'm going to do something else.
yeah, no. So what I would do is whenever I had that urge, I would eat some sunflower seeds so that my hands were busy, and then I downloaded some cheesy game on my phone. I'm like, oh, it's solitaire, spider solitaire. I'm just gonna play one game of spider solitaire, and I would play the game, and then by the time I was done, I was like, oh shoot, it's time to get back to work. And so I definitely, and
Yeah.
it's a substitution habit in the
Yep.
meantime, just to sort of preoccupy your mind.
That's what I've heard.
Obviously, it's less harmful. It wasn't hurting anybody. I wasn't choosing a habit that was equally bad, but just something to distract myself till I built enough time where I have a new habit now.
Yeah, and that, I read a book on habits. I can't remember which one it was recently, and it talked about that. That's why I was curious. And it talked about you can't just cut habits out amazingly. I thought you could, but that's what it said. It says you can't really actually do that. You have to replace it with something. Just saying like, oh, I'm not going to do that. No, what are you going to do instead? And then replacing it with something that's healthy or beneficial or something, like you said, sunflower seeds. I've heard that one's good for smoking.
Yeah.
Um, and that kind of thing, that's a really good one. And then just not being around some of those people and putting yourself in those associations so that yeah, you can actually grow. And then were you conscious at getting into, like you said, we're in some of the same groups, were you pretty conscious on building your association at the same time as you were conscious of like, we're not being friends, I can't do this? Were you also conscious of like, all right, same thing, like replacing people with people? Maybe, I guess that's, I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but
Yeah, definitely. And that's how I built my group is, I wanted to build a bunch of like-minded individuals in a safe environment where we had each other as a community. And so I'm a very social kind of person. So I've always been drawn to large community of like-minded individuals, good or bad. And so, I kind of built that with my staff where we're all like-minded and we have this safe community. And in recent years, I put CrossFit in because that was another like, talk about addictive, but in a good way, thing that I knew would be beneficial in my program. But it's a health minded, like minded community where you push each other for a greater good. And then in the recent years, that's where I started gravitating towards the entrepreneur groups where we're all like minded and we're in the same place in life and we're driving to do better and do more. And so definitely, I've always gravitated, good or bad, towards groups that are like minded.
that's awesome. So where do you see yourself wanting to go with Elevate in the next 5, 10 years?
My goal is to, and this is a big word, disrupt the addiction community. Most people only know one way, it's AA and NA, and I think that's awesome, but there is other ways. Like I mentioned with Elevate, we have CrossFit, we have mindfulness, we have workable tools, but I want to be as big as NA and AA. I want to be like, well, you need treatment. Great. Is it going to be this, or is it going to be Elevate? And so I want to expand all over the United States. I want to have free Elevate meetings. We've already expanded our virtual outpatient, so you could do Elevate from your home if you have to and you can't come to rehab. So my idea is that the Elevate name is as big as that, and we're able to help as many people as we possibly can with our modality.
Oh, I love that. I love it. Big goals are always the best way to have them.
Yes.
Big
Very
mission,
big,
big.
lofty goals. Like that's where
Yeah.
we're going. That's what I need to do. I mean, like I said, I've already been doing this 28 years, so I need to get there before I decide to retire, which I mean, I'm kind of, I'm like you, Angela. I'm a bit of a workaholic. I can't see myself actually, quote unquote, retiring, but I definitely want to see it taken to the next level where we're helping more people and we're more accessible to more people for sure.
Before you get, man, I don't know if you've read the last Robin Sharma book, Hero Manifesto, and he talks about death and he calls it a hotel upgrade. So, you just want to get this done before you get a hotel upgrade.
Yeah,
And I really like
absolutely.
that. I'm like, that's a good way to put it, a hotel upgrade.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and like you said, you never know when that time is the time. And I think both you and I like operate in this urgency because we don't know when it's going to be the last time. And I've overcome so many things with with drug rehab, the the laws, the rules, restrictions, the healthcare, the COVID, the insurance, the there's just so much, and you just never know when I don't have one more in me due to something. And so there's
Mhm.
just this constant urgency to go as fast and hard as I possibly can until we quote unquote get there, which I don't know if I'll ever get there, but it's
Wherever there is.
definitely, yeah, I don't know if there is a there, but definitely I feel an urgency to, take this thing to the next level as fast as I possibly can.
I love that. That's so cool. Um, so in wrapping up, I have three final questions that I always ask everybody.
Okay.
And then I'll ask you like what's one thing you want to kind of leave that I didn't touch on. But here's the final questions. First one, someone's looking for their purpose. Everyone's always like, well, I want to find my purpose. You have your purpose, blah, 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 but I want to find mine. What's one sentence that you would say that could help them find their purpose?
Get quiet and feel what brings you joy more than anything in this world. Like, what is it that when you're doing that one thing, it's like a flow state, like everything else disappears. This is the thing that makes me happier than anything.
Awesome. I love that. Now, I'm sure you have more than one, but right now, what comes to mind? What's your favorite quote and why?
Oh, I am so bad at quotes because I am just super bad at quotes. I don't know why. I just like one of those things. I can't remember who said it or where, but that sort of thing. And I would definitely say, especially, hmm, yeah. Right now, I'm all about living empowered, not powerless. And I'm just saying that because that's the name of my podcast. So it's kind of like my quote.
Mm-hmm.
But I really believe in us building up other people is the
Mm-hmm.
key to success, as opposed to, especially coming out of what we are with the pandemic. So let's just like empower each other to be the best versions of themselves.
That's awesome. I love that. And last question is what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
Oh, gosh, that's scary. First of all, I don't want a gravestone. I don't want people to feel like they have to come visit me. But second of all, um, here to help, like, helping. That is my purpose in life. That's why I want to be here. That's what I do. That's what makes me happy. So it's
Mm,
all about the help for me.
that's awesome. All right. Like I said, so let's say you run into someone at a coffee shop and they're just like, what's one thing that you would love to share with the listeners that maybe I didn't touch on or we didn't touch on today? What's something that you'd love to share?
I think the biggest thing is take action, move forward, ask the questions, get the help, get somebody else help. Like, don't wait for something really bad to happen for yourself or your loved one. So many people, and again, I hate to keep bringing it up, but they get paralysis by analysis. Like they want to do it, but they don't know, or they think about doing it, but they're not sure. And they don't do what needs or wants to be done. And then they live with those regrets their whole life. And obviously, with my business, it's life or death. Like that one more time that I'm not sure, I don't want to intrude on that person. That could be, you could live with them
Mm,
dying the rest of your life when you knew there was a problem and you were trying to be like socially nice or not bust them. Or if even yourself, you want help, but you're like on the fence of whether I should do it or not. I would just say go forward, take the step. You will always be more grateful that you took a step as opposed to not taking it and living with
mm.
those regrets.
Wow, that's really good. Um, as always, listeners, watchers, whatever, rate, review, follow. Make sure you follow Angie. She's an amazing person. Reach out, obviously, to Elevate if there's something that they can help you with, because I know that would make Angie's and the whole business life like they're made here to help people. But make sure to do all that stuff, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. go out there today and change a life. And together, if we change one life or one starfish every day, we will make a big impact in this world and be able to change the world together. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you so much, Angie.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.